on with a single motion and vote. This agenda is designed to expedite the handling of limited routine matters by City Council. Either the public or a council member may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda prior to Council's vote. The mayor will ask if a citizen or council member wishes to have any specific item removed from the consent agenda for discussion. A, approval of the special work session minutes of September 18th, 2021, and work session and regular meeting minutes of September 28th, 2021. B, approval of the expenditure vouchers of October 12th, 2022, or 2021. And C, approval of a renewal tavern liquor license for Cortez Conference Center, LLC, doing business as Destination Grill, located at 2121 East Main Street, Cortez.
Mayor, sorry, can I jump in here? Mayor Pro Tem, can I add an item to other business titled Communication Between Advisory Board, City Staff, and Council?
Yeah, do we need a motion on that? Would you like to make a motion?
You can make that motion with your approval.
To add an agenda item to 12 other business items of business.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition to other business.
Second.
Kiefhoffer.
Aye.
Lucero.
Aye.
Rainey.
Aye.
Yazzie.
Aye.
Dobry.
Aye.
Medina.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda we have citizen participation. 6 citizens will be allotted time to address council. No member of the public shall comment more than once at any meeting, nor shall any person be ceded the time of another commenter. Comments may be limited to 4 minutes per person. Please comment on items not listed as public hearings. Council may or may not respond to comments. So if anyone would like to make public comment, please go to the podium and state your name and address for us, and you'll get 4 minutes.
Okay. My name is Bob Wagoner. I live at 1206 South Madison Street here in town. Some of you know my name and know that I'm probably going to talk about the band shell, which is true. So the band shell conversation has been going on now for over 2 years, and I sort of want to just bring you up to date a little bit. As context, let me just say something that you all know, and that is that summer concerts in the park are among the most durable and beloved of American traditions. Communities, small and large, across the country have concerts in the summer because they enrich community life. And that's why this group of about a dozen citizens who call ourselves the Friends of the Band Shell have been working on this and talking about this for the last 2 years. So I'm sure you recall that back in April, well, Matt, you weren't here yet, I don't think then, but back in April, the Friends of the Band Shell were on the agenda of a work session, and our architect went through with council and described the series, sort of reviewed the process by which we looked at several possible sites for a band shell. And he talked about the pros and the cons of these various sites and then explained why we settled on a site that's just north of the library parking lot. So, but the main thing that came out of that meeting back in April was several of you folks on the council said that this project needs to move into the standard procedure within the city and follow the process for building something here in the city. That is, working with city staff to move this project along. Well, that was really good news for us because, to be honest, we had felt like we were sort of on the outside looking in. And so knowing that we were going to work with the city staff and check the boxes that needed to be checked and do the step-by-step, that was good news for us. So within a few days after that April meeting, our architect, his name is Jim Keogh, by the way, he called Tracy Hughes and said, "This is good news. Help us now. What's the next step? What do we do now, and what do we do next after that? And how do we work with you in getting this project to move along?" And Tracy said she was concerned about two things. She said she was concerned about parking, and she referred Jim to City Code 5.02, which you may or may not know by the number, but that piece of the city code stipulates the amount of parking that has to go along with various kinds of facilities that are built in the city, apartment buildings, schools, churches, so forth.
Bob, unfortunately, the 4 minutes is up. Do we have other public commenters? Because if we don't, then I can give you another 4 minutes. Otherwise, I would love for you to get onto our workshop so we can hear a more comprehensive update and actually have a discussion.
Well, that actually is what I wanted to ask you for, was to once more be on your agenda so that you can pepper us with questions and we can finally either move this idea forward or give it up. So.
Okay. Linda? Could we add Bob to our workshop at our next meeting?
I can't answer that tonight without looking at all the items that are there, but I can certainly touch base with him.
Okay.
On when we could.
Yeah.
If that
Thank
works.
you.
Yes, be happy to do that.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, Linda will reach out to you. Thank you for coming. All right, do we have any other public commenters? Okay, we'll close the public comment session and move on to presentations. We have none. Public hearings, none. Unfinished business, none. So we'll move on to new business. A, the Goodall mural restoration and the 2022 budget request. Library Director Isabella Sharpenstein.
Is this still on? Yes, okay. Good evening, Council. I am here as a representative for the Public Arts Committee, the advisory board that we have with the city. We submitted in 2 memos in your council package, if you would like to refer to it. The first one is the harvest time mural repair that has to be done in 2021, or they would like to do in 2021. And the second one is a budget advisement for the fiscal year 2022 for the advisory board. And I will just pass this on to Brenda Van Kuren, who is a member of the Arts Advisory Committee, and she will explain more about that.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Pro Tem, City Manager Drew, and everybody else. My name is Brenda Van Kuren. I'm a member of the Cortez Public Arts Advisory Committee. If you'll please refer to the first memo, that memo would be the Goodell mural. The Cortez Public Arts Advisory Committee had commenced reviewing or inspecting the murals that the city owns and that the city is responsible for maintaining under a legal document. It is a wall use agreement that was executed with 7 different building owners. Those wall use agreements are still in force and effect, and they require that the city maintains the 7 murals that are in the city. And during the inspection of the murals, it was found that one of them in particular suffered damage that really should be attended to right away. And so the Cortez Public Arts Advisory Committee had inspected the murals, started taking notes, got in touch with the original artist, Brad Goodell, who completed that mural in 2011, and asked him to come and take a look at the mural. He also had some outside people from California, I believe, who are also mural artists, take a look at that mural. And that mural has sustained water damage that has lifted up the paint layers and has cracked the surface paint of the mural in a few places. The full extent of that damage is not necessarily known, and that mural, of course, is Harvest Time McElmo Peaches. It's located on the Denkai Thrift Shop east-facing wall. Again, that mural's been in place since 2011. I asked Brad Goodell if he would give the city an idea of what the city could estimate as a market value for that 51-foot wide by 19-foot tall mural, and he estimates, based on his recent work, a value of $47,000. I don't think that the city has a $47,000 item on its balance sheet for that particular asset. In fact, I don't know what the city values for all of its art assets, including the Stanton Engelhardt pieces that are hanging in City Hall, or any others for that matter. But it just seems that that mural should be tended to. And so what the committee has determined is that the repairs or restoration work should be done sooner rather than later. Restoration would include Brad scraping off the lifted painted surface, and then reapplying the artwork. And then he would touch up the faded parts of the female figure's shirt. In your packet, you have some exhibits, some images that show you some of the mural. I'm afraid the female shirt is not very visible, but some of you might have in your memory from looking at that mural an idea of that entire mural. There is some detail of the damage of the artwork. The total cost that Brad requires is $1,200 to restore that mural. The committee would like to see that work done this year. Brad can commence the work this month and complete it by the end of the year, weather permitting. So the request, of course, is consistent with Ordinance 1232 regarding operations, maintenance, and restoration. The committee recommends that City Council cause the City of Cortez to fund the entire repair cost of $1,200 for the city-owned Harvest Time McElmo Peaches mural in 2021. That's the first memo.
Do you know what is the length of our MOU for mural maintenance regarding these murals?
Well, there is not a memorandum of understanding. Rather, there is a wall use agreement that was executed with the building owner. That is a 10-year agreement, but it has an automatic extension clause, and that is what is keeping the contract in force and effect. In order to exit the contract, the City of Cortez would need to issue notice and then start talking with the building owner. And so there are various avenues that the city can approach if it does not wish to maintain the mural any longer, just like with any of the other murals. Does that answer your question?
What year was that? What year did that go into effect?
2011.
2011. Okay.
And it was a 10-year agreement. So about now that 10 years has passed. I believe it was completed in September 2011.
Actually, it was Mayor and Council. It was April of 2011, and it expired in April of 2021. And she is correct that it has an autumn, and there's conflicting clauses in the wall use agreement. On one hand, it says that it's can be automatically extended. And then the next clause, it literally says that the city can back out of this at any time for any reason.
With notice. I think that's a 30-day notice.
No,
It's not?
no.
Okay. Then I guess we could use a reasonableness standard. And so engage in good faith communication with the owner. Does anyone have any other questions about this particular item?
Brenda, is there a possibility that we might approach the businesses whose facade has the murals on them to see if they might choose to take part in this ongoing restoration?
Yes, that is an option, and that would just require getting in touch with them and being willing to have discussions. So there are 7 murals, and there are 7 different building owners, and that would require some time. And if you would like to have the Cortez Public Arts Advisory Committee do that, that is an option. We have already had some discussion around what could be done in the event that the city did not wish to fund mural maintenance. But we would need to take the proper steps in accordance with those agreements, even if there are some conflicting clauses. And you may direct the committee to do just that, and then it would be done.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor and council, if I can jump in here for just a minute. I think right now we're focusing on the harvest time or the peaches mural. And although that did expire in April or of 20 this year, and depending on how we interpret that, I'll just leave it at that. The issue is it was in disrepair back then. It's still in disrepair now. No matter what we decide to do going forward, is probably in everybody's best interest if we at least spend the $1,200 to get that up to par and it can survive the winter. So with that, I would suggest to the council that perhaps we pay that $1,200 and then we direct the Arts Council Committee to look for other partners and other funding sources moving on. I don't think anybody disagrees that these art murals are very, very important to our community, but they seem to have morphed beyond what the original intent was, which was some minor infusions of capital to now we're into many thousands of dollars. Just based upon what Brenda's provided us here and the committee, $1,200 is only the tip of the iceberg. The total repair for this is like $5,300 for the same mural.
If I may, some of the cost would be incurred in 2022. You'll see some more of the mural maintenance budget items in the budget advisory memo, which is next. But for just this year, the request is please approve $1,200 in, I would say it's emergency funding for mural restoration for this year.
Do we have this funding in the respective budget?
We do.
So what we're saying is this just a one-time, excuse me, a one-time cost, correct?
Correct, and that
And
is
no
just
more.
for this year. Just for this year. There,
I
as
mean,
far
no,
as
for
the
this year and ever since our agreement, expired and everything, and we're just wondering if it wouldn't be
well,
a continuation.
I believe that what you might do is have Mike Green review the documents, but to.
I'll make a motion to fund the one-time restoration at $1,200 and to and ask staff to explore other funding partnerships to fund the maintenance ongoing.
Second.
So what you're saying is the staff to do it, or you want the committee to explore?
I am asking staff.
Would that be Isabella? Drew, would that be Isabella?
We'll make that decision moving
Okay.
down the line here.
Oh,
So.
okay, very good.
I'll second his motion.
I have a second from Councilmember. Okay. Yazzie,
Aye.
Rainey,
Aye.
Dobry,
Aye.
Kiefhoffer,
Aye.
Lucero,
Aye.
Medina.
Aye.
So is this in proper form, since there's technically two things on this one item that we would be discussing today?
Yes, we can split them off. We can split them off as long as we are upfront about that's what we're doing, because we are dealing with different issues. This one just is that particular mural, and then she's got more to her presentation.
Okay, you have another memo. That one is budget advisement for fiscal year 2022. And we thought it was best to split this up into two separate items to avoid some confusion. So, consistent with the ordinance and at the directive or request of Councilmember Rainey, the Cortez Public Arts Advisory Committee was asked to advise on the 2022 budget, and for very good reason, so that there is no confusion about whether the city will have set aside any funds for the city's art assets or for art investments or for art maintenance or anything that is pertaining to anything having to do with art assets or art, funding any art experiences or investments. So what you have in front of you is a brief list of budget items that the committee has explored. I will simply read down the list. You've got more detail in the back. Specific powers and duties of Ordinance 1232, which governs the Arts Advisory Committee, are cited. And then I'm going to ask you if you have any questions. The first project is the city's mural maintenance and restoration, which includes top coating, harvest time, and that is the same mural that we just discussed, and Old Spanish Trail. Old Spanish Trail has suffered some water damage. That is on a metal substrate, that particular mural. And I have just spoken with, via email, Mariah Kaminsky, the original artist, who completed that in 2016. That also is under a wall use agreement. And she has expressed some concern for the water damage, and she is looking forward to doing the repair work. The difference here is she's willing to fund it herself. And so she just simply needs the green light to go forward. When she's done, she would like to see that the mural is then sealed with a matte UV-resistant sealer that would be sprayed on and then backbrushed or simply backbrushed on. If we are going to do this mural maintenance work early next year in 2022, then she would do the repair work first, and then immediately after it can be sealed. And so we've obtained estimates from Brad Goodell to do that sealing work for us. And so, and when I say us, I actually mean for the city. It is not really for the committee, it's for the city. That amount is $5,300. The next item is to activate Cortez's Alley with art. That is a project. There's a $5,000 line item there for materials and labor. And this is a project that the Cortez Public Arts Advisory Committee would like to support. We've already started looking into obtaining outside support, that is outside of the city, $5,000 to $10,000 from the Lower Foundation, and also in-kind support from Mitchell Tom's Cortez Partners LLC entity that owns a building, which the back of the building faces the Cortez Cultural Center. So that project would be to brighten up that alleyway and then set the stage for the next project, which is the Cortez Arts Festival Night Out pilot project. For labor and professional fees, the committee would ask the city to spend $3,150, and that would be primarily for marketing. That potentially is a project that could be completed in collaboration with the Cortez Retail Enhancement Association. I'll be meeting with AJ Dillon soon to talk to her about it. It would also be done in collaboration with the Cortez Cultural Center. And then the restaurants who have back patios facing that alleyway, that would be the Lounge and Lizard, and if Stonefish ever opens, the Stonefish. And so it could be a quite inclusive project. The next project would be the Rotary Club's Parka de Vita Skate Park Art Project, and this would be near the skate park. This is an ever-evolving project that could be vetted and made to fit with the city's requirements. And so it is not the same project that Bill Tietzel of the Rotary Club had presented with the expressive chalkboard art. It is not that. It is something that is a little bit more, that will be more in tune with the city and in terms of meeting safety requirements and being no more harmful than typical playground equipment. And so what the Cortez Public Arts Advisory Committee can do is to help curate any art that goes up, so it wouldn't be an invitation to anyone to come and just place art anywhere. So we already have, the city already has something like that, and that's the skate park. And that's already in place. Let's see, the next one is the high school art exhibit at the Cultural Center, $500 for marketing and catering. This would be championed by our student member, Skylie Lindsay, and this would be held in April before Skylie is set to graduate. And so this would involve high school students from the area, even including homeschooled students. And so that is the list of the particular projects. There's more detail following in the exhibits. The total amount is $14,950, which is just under the $15,000 level, which are the historic levels that apparently were approved in 2018 and 2019 for arts in the city. And so the committee collectively was not comfortable with more than that, and so this memo and this recommendation is consistent with the committee's collective comfort level and recommendation. What the committee recommends is that if the city is going to set aside funds, that it must set up separate and distinct account reserve funds for arts for the city. And so there is no question about whether there is a budget approval for arts, and so that funding doesn't have to come from somewhere else down the road.
I have a question for our finance director. Is that a regular process that has happened for any other committee or is in use by the city of Cortez? Okay.
If we say we were to, like, okay, we're gonna allocate $10,000 to the Arts Committee every year, but we need to see, like, they have to come to us to ask to spend every single dollar of it. That is still not. That is wholly and completely inappropriate for the city to be managing funds that do not belong to the city. Okay.
May I? The arts assets belong to the city. They are assets of the city. The Arts Advisory Committee owns nothing. And so the Arts Advisory Committee is attached to the city. It serves at the pleasure of the council. That is how it was set up. It also serves at the pleasure of the administration. So the city manager can ask or direct the Arts Advisory Committee to do something that is subject to or within the parameters of the powers and duties. And so what I would recommend is that anyone who is interested, please read Ordinance 1232. It is posted at the Muni Code application. If you go to the city's website, the official website, you can look up codes and charter or charter and codes and look up the keyword Arts Committee. You'll find it under administration. And so I understand that this is maybe a different entity, but it is definitely attached to the city. It has no autonomy. It does not handle funds. It is not a signatory. It is not a fiduciary. And so it doesn't have that level of responsibility. It really is an advisory entity. And what I'm hoping is that we set ourselves up in that proper format so that we're all working together, so that we are a cohesive team. And so
I'm going to ask you to stop for a second. So my concern is with, I guess, the Arts Committee kind of reaching beyond their role a little bit. And I mean, for instance, if you look at another committee in the city, the Historic Preservation Committee, the Historic Preservation Committee internally writes grants, make sure that there aren't matches that are required to do the work that they're doing. I don't know that outside of our budgeting process that we can approve a $15,000 expenditure for you, and especially the way you're specifically directing, I guess, would be what I would say. I don't think that is appropriate, and I think that's beyond the role of the Arts Committee.
thank you, I understand that. I heard what you said. We were asked to be quite specific with a budget and put in some line items, and we were asked by Councilmember Rainey to please provide advisement. As far as I'm concerned, I've been involved with the Arts Advisory Committee since mid-2019, and this is the first that I know that the Arts Advisory Committee, since I've been with it, has been asked to advise on the budget, on an arts budget for the city. And so it was a little bit confusing. In fact, I asked for some top-down advisement, and so in a leadership meeting, Drew had said that the Ordinance 1232 would serve as the top-down advisement. And so it may be that the powers and duties are a little bit, maybe they need to be reviewed. And so that's possible. The Council of 2017 saw fit to put this Arts Advisory Committee in place, and it was born out of a mural committee and people who were interested in seeing enhancements made to the city of Cortez, visual enhancements that had to do with art. And so the murals were then investments made by the city. And so I suppose that I could ask, and I would love to have some clarity on what is appropriate for this seated council. We have a new administration, we have a new city liaison, we have a new finance director who is very, very busy. And so any kind of support looking into advisement, you are free to modify, amend, even repeal Ordinance 1232. And you can change the way that the Arts Advisory Committee functions so that it works better with the city, or maybe it can operate similar to other advisory boards. We are an advisory committee. And so, and I do appreciate your point. I think that if we had clarity on that, we could function maybe better, which I would appreciate.
Well, and it sounds like we've already got, we have obligations to some of the murals. We have contracts, so I feel like we should honor those at the very least, but clearly discuss what's beyond that.
I would also say that I would have no problem with pursuing grant funding. And actually, I would like to work with Chris Burkhead in that manner. I think that would be a good way to raise funds, and in fact, some of the former projects had a fundraising aspect. And so even the Cortez Festival, the Arts Festival, that would require some vendor fees, so, to offset some costs. And we've had good success with going out into the community and finding willing donors, in-kind donors, financial donors. This is a great community that has a lot of vested citizens, and they're interested in seeing good things happen here, and they would like to see Cortez beautified or enhanced. And so there are many paths to to reach the goals that collectively we might have.
Mayor and Council, Kelly Koski would like to address. Kelly, can we have you come over to a microphone, please?
So, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, I think it's important to point out also that this request is for the 2022 budget, which has not even been approved yet. So we are requesting to spend funds from a budget that has not even been approved. Just a note.
Have you looked into creating a creative art district like Mancos has?
Actually, yes. The committee has brought that idea up, and members individually have brought it up, and we've had discussions with outside entities about that. And that would be something that individually or collectively as a committee we could look into, and that would be appropriate, I think. And so you could even ask us to look into that.
Yeah, because it comes with state funding, so I think that's worth pursuing to see if that can be a funding source. Because obviously art is important to the community, but where that support comes from is different for each person.
So if the council is amenable to considering having the Arts Advisory Committee operate more like what was referenced earlier, Historical Preservation Society? Well, that is something that we could look into, and it might, I personally, I'm open to solutions, and I just know that the Arts Advisory Committee has a dedicated group of people who would like to see something happen, and there are funds available through the state of Colorado, and so there are various ways to support an entity, so that's quite possible.
I guess part of our discussion, and maybe I misunderstood, was we were really talking about looking at specific projects one at a time, not necessarily all of these together. So that different projects have different needs, and as Ms. Medina just mentioned, some of them even, we have contracts or we have maybe a responsibility for some of the existing projects. So I was a little bit taken back by just sort of the overall piece to this. I'm more comfortable with it being approached as a city council and really having a discussion piece by piece, I guess, and not as a whole big project. And having said that, I was on council when we did the mural projects and way back when, and I'm a big fan of the arts for sure. I moved here from Salida, which is very much an arts community and has all kinds of public art, etc. The question for funding those items is a wholly another question. And furthermore, I do think that it would be worthwhile to take a look at Ordinance 1232 and really determine maybe a side-by-side comparison with some of the other advisory committees that we have, and just look at roles and responsibilities of the advisory committees in general, and maybe have some alignment around those. Just kind of my opinion. And I don't know, I guess really it'd be Linda and maybe Orly. Honestly, I'm sitting here and I cannot recall how we originally funded for the mural projects to happen, but I know that we were on a program where it happened every year, and I just can't pull it off the top of my head. But any ideas?
Matt?
No.
Matt, I have an idea. We had Chris Burkett come to an Arts Advisory Committee meeting, and he mentioned how the Arts Advisory Committee was established, and he had mentioned that the seed money was about $9,000 from a defunct association, I believe, of downtown business, people who are interested in revitalization or vitalization of the downtown area, downtown businesses. And So the seed money was then put into funding different aspects of the murals. And it evolved, I think it took roughly about I don't know if it was more than 3 years to get all of the murals done. There were always some scheduling issues. And I think they estimated that 15,000 would be sufficient to cover mural maintenance. They were actually concerned about graffiti. Well, graffiti was not an issue for any of the murals. And so they actually weathered fairly well. They did a rotating 3 to 5 year sealing of each mural. And then, so I think that's basically how the 15,000 was determined to be a good number. How exactly they arrived at it, I don't think he really said. And so from my discussions with Brad Goodell and also Mariah Kaminsky, mural work is something that is part art and science in terms of use of chemicals and how they weather. Some of the east-facing murals, they don't weather very well. They're subject to thermal shock, more temperature fluctuations, and then depends on the substrate. When a mural is on an inferior substrate, it doesn't weather as well. And so that seems to be the case for about 3 murals in the city. And so they require more maintenance.
So it sounds like for the purposes of this item on our agenda, it would be inappropriate for us to agree to any of it because it would be agreeing to funds that haven't been appropriated. So it sounds like we need to do a little bit more discussion around how the advisory board should look going forward. But at this time, I think it would be awesome to do a motion so we can move on and have our next presenters. Unless there are other questions.
Could I add to that? I think this is going to be a gradual thing, and we're already moving with it. And Brenda has done a great deal of work and been a real motivator for her committee. But also, there are, someone mentioned Bankus. We now have, one art gallery. I believe we are on the verge of having another one. In addition to that, the Cultural Center will be opening the plan is to have a co-op gallery there where the gift shop was, and they've already renovated the bottom floor and made a large part of it available for an art gallery. So as I see it, the movement is, the ball is already rolling. It's just, may not be happening fast enough, but we are moving in a good direction with it. So just be advised.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
I was going to just mention, I agree with Robert's comments there a while ago, the way everything was stated in there. And if I recall, like Matt was saying, I think when this budget thing came up at one time, when the thing got started, I think it was a one-time deal. Don't quote me correctly on that, but we can check into that. I thought it was a one time only, but it was not going to be an every year project, and I still think this committee money or whatever shouldn't be involved with the city's budget personally either. So,
if I may, Orly, the wall use agreements were 10-year agreements, and so there was definitely a 10-year timeline for maintenance responsibility. And so as far as one time, I'm not sure if you mean that it was the 15,000 was approved to sit there once and then be expended through the 10 years. But as far as I understand, the way the budgeting process works, that funds set aside may go to zero. At least that's what we were told recently. And that's how we were to look at it. And really, this memo is a culmination of a lot of work and several meetings and trying to get at exactly what was asked for. And so if it is not, that's okay. We just need some good direction. And so furthermore, when Chris was at the meeting, or in some email exchanges, if the Arts Advisory Committee is going to try to seek funding from outside sources, from the state or anywhere else, or even through the Lohr Foundation, it needs to have a way to track those funds. It needs an audit trail. And so, and hence the need for a separate and distinct account. The funding for the Cortez Cultural Center of $1,200, well, that had to be, there had to be some accommodation made for that, because really there was no $5,000 budget approved, which was the understanding I had when I had spoken with John Doherty, Alicia Gomori-Lusker, and David Rainey earlier this year, before we even started getting back together post-COVID. And so, for for all intents and purposes, last year, after February or March, the committee went on hiatus, and so we just started getting back into business, I think, really in May. And so we're finding our way through this. There's, I just would simply like some good direction about where to go. So if you think that arts is something good for the city and you want to support it, then maybe you could consider, each of you, how you would like to see that happen, but it needs to be fitting with the administration and what is possible. So that's all I ask, really.
I think as far as guidance, at least for me, I think I would ask for the Arts Committee to explore becoming a creative district. I think that's something that we talked about, as well as there's some state funding around that. Look into the possibility of doing that, as well as working with the new and existing galleries in Cortez in the arts community.
And we are. The Zoo Gallery would be doing the marketing for the Alleyway Art Project, which actually could occur with or without the city's support. It would be nice to have the Merle's support at least. So we've already made some headway, and that's quite possible. So it is ideally collaboration with other entities who have similar interests. I think that's a great way to go.
So do we need to table anything, or can we?
Nothing else needs to be done unless
Okay.
it's the will of the council that additional action be taken.
Okay, thank you so much for your time, Brenda. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome. My pleasure.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. It's the Community Intervention Program, presented by Chief of Police Vern Knuckles.
Good evening, Mayor, Pro Temp, Council. Haley Leonard from Axis is actually going to present. I wrote the memo and got on the council agenda. We've put together a steering committee to try to address some of the mental health issues that the community's seen. So we have support, Shaq Powers from the county, Jim Spratland, Emergency Manager for the county, Jay Balfour with Cortez Fire, Marshall Goodall with the Mancos Marshal's Office. All of us have been working for over a year on this program and feel that we're now at a position that we've got the program put together, and in order to move forward, we need to seek support. So I'm going to turn it over to Haley, let her show you what we've been working on, and then open it up for questions afterwards. Thanks.
Hello. Do I need to do anything special? It's plugged in. Is it? I'm gonna press any buttons. I'm Haley Leonard-Saunders. I'm the Director of Public Relations and Development for Access Health System. I've been working with these subject matter experts for 18 months on this program. Recently, the court, sorry, y'all, it's late. The Montezuma County Commissioners approved for the program to be housed within the county, which was the big step in order to move forward with this program. So, right now, we want to tell you, many of you have heard this spiel over and over, but we just want to give a quick update to everyone viewing tonight and other council members who haven't been able to hear about it. And then we can answer all of your questions. I think they're working on it. Unplug it. Plug it in.
The tried and true.
Turn it on, turn it off. There we go. Thank you. So the Community Intervention Program, our goal from the very beginning was to create a new way to respond to non-criminal calls through the 911 system that are needing different types of responses from law enforcement. So the goal is really to engage mental health in the emergency response system. Right now, crisis system is completely separate from 911. If there's a mental health emergency, crisis is called after the fact. So really, we're doing a disservice to our community members who are having, mental health, substance use concerns, family conflict, by bringing the police into calls for service when really we could be looking at it as how do we bring resources to our community members who are experiencing a really high level of need. We also want to look at how do we bring down this burden on law enforcement and EMS. You know that right now, especially in Cortez, EMS, fire, law enforcement all respond together, and some of the calls that they're responding to are, we calculated, taking hours and hours of time. So a lot of time is being put into calls that are really not necessarily appropriate for law enforcement to be responding to. So our goal is really to create a prevention-based program. There's a lot of great prevention programs in Cortez and Montezuma County, but they're not necessarily connected at the time of need when people are reaching out to 911 for help. Like, they're at the worst point, they're asking for help, and we have the opportunity to bring resources to them instead of handing them a card and saying, why don't you call Access later? Why don't you call the Pinion Project? I think there's a program that might work for you. This would be putting people who know their resources and are the experts that are on the scene to say, Orly, let me help you right now. Matt, let me help you right now. Let's get you set up with an appointment. Let's get you connected. I know this great person at Pinion Project, and we're gonna call them right now. So in addition, the pilot, we want to run a pilot program for the next 2 years, and the pilot really is to increase crisis de-escalation at the point of response instead of a handoff and hoping that individuals and families will connect to resources later on. The team that we're proposing is an EMT and a behavioral health clinician that can respond to behavioral health needs, connection to care, case management support, low-level medical needs, and things that don't require a full ambulance and the whole squad coming out every single time. So the reason that we started having these conversations is nationally there's a lot of dialogue around how do we pull law enforcement out of places that they shouldn't necessarily be. And this is all about adding capability to the 911 system, not doing anything to change the way our law enforcement operates. We really want to support them. And when we pulled the data, it was kind of scary what's happening in Montezuma County. There's been a major increase in domestic violence calls, a lot of welfare checks, and in digging into those, a lot of those were from people who went unchecked during the pandemic, not receiving regular medical care, don't have connections to regular supports, and people hadn't heard from them. So they were relying on the police to go out and find their person. A major increase in hospital and ER admissions related to substance use, so that also includes the ICU, which does quite a bit of withdrawal management. A large increase in suicide threats, not necessarily completions. Montezuma County is seeing quite a few overdoses, and that is of concern and being worked on in a parallel program with the opioid settlement through the Attorney General's office. We're seeing access and increase in crisis calls, diagnostic evals. Cortez Fire Protection District has seen a 19% increase in their calls, and Jay says it's moving on up for this year as well. And what's really concerning is crimes against children are increasing. You know, we didn't have the hard data here, but listening to the DA, our partners at Four Corners Child Advocacy Center, the work that we do, the work of law enforcement, there's a lot happening with families in our community, and they need some additional supports. They're using 911 for things that families shouldn't have to use 911 for. Vernon's team got a call because they couldn't get a kid to go to bed. And that's just the lowest level of reasons that people are reaching out for help. So like we said, significant health needs are going unattended. Youth are experiencing a lot of conflict at home, and from a crisis standpoint, what we've seen from Access is the reason that they're using the crisis line and reaching out for help is conflict at home, feelings of isolation, less connectedness. It used to be they would call when it was very extreme. There's a lot that they're dealing with because of the pandemic. Law enforcement also spends a ton of time resourcing on non-criminal calls, which is concerning, and we want to get them back out into the field so they can work on proactive policing that really supports the community, diverts crime, and keeps us a safe community to live in. So a program like this increases access to behavioral health and primary care, first and foremost. Access has just started a co-responder program in Durango. We have done 335 calls so far in 8 months, and 15% of those people needed access just to a primary care doctor. They had chronic conditions that hadn't been managed, no connection to primary care, and they were able to receive care. We've been able to do follow-ups. 90% of the people that we encountered agreed to do a follow-up, which is a lot of people, and about 60% of those were solved on the scene. So they didn't require going to another location like the hospital or anything else. And the biggest thing is only 2%, we've seen it consistent, 2% resulted in arrest since the beginning of the program. So we are finding ways to divert people out of the criminal justice system who really just need resources and a helping hand. So type of calls that we hope this program could respond to, like we said, welfare checks, suicide prevention, conflict resolution, basic first aid, homelessness support, and resource connection and referral. We have a lot of underutilized resources for our community members that just need that connection so they know that it's there. So one of the ways that this program will enhance and contribute to Cortez is proactive policing can divert crime. When there's cops out doing their jobs, being able to engage with the community and not having to chase people down, it diverts crime, and crime costs people money, whether it's individuals, businesses, families. It's inconvenient and it costs money. Rachel, our grant writer, found a really great article on how these types of programs improve perceived safety. So it's really great for tourism and keeping disturbances out of the public eye that really make a difference when you have tourists in town that are trying to go to your restaurants, go to your businesses, galleries, etc. It also offers a different level of support that doesn't involve the police when dealing with families and children. You know, with Safe to Tell calls, it involves a police car often going to someone's house that could look really different in an unmarked vehicle with a team not dressed in a uniform that can work with families differently. This is a really messy diagram, but basically the program would work through dispatch. Dispatch would triage the calls. There will be a very, very specific operating procedure for them to follow. We've gotten a ton of data from programs in Denver, Eugene, Oregon, lots and lots of co-responder programs. So we have a really great starting point for working with dispatch to ensure that they're picking the right types of calls for this team to respond to that are safe. This one's messy too, but basically what this is saying is when you put co-responder programs or programs like this with an EMT and clinician, the number of M1 holds, which are involuntary holds, have decreased significantly. So we want actions to be voluntary with people. The last thing we want to do is take someone's rights away. So if a program like this can help people make choices and engage in whatever the outcomes are, that's the better way for us to go. So down to the program itself. What we are proposing for our pilot program is 2 teams with an EMT and a clinician that would serve all of Montezuma County. Beginning, the program development and hiring would begin January of 2022. Time flies. So this is what we would like. Right now, there are requests for proposals out from the county, and they will be choosing the contractors on Tuesday to provide the services for this program. So what we are proposing, and I think Drew might have talked to you all about this already, is a cost share for the pilot program. This is lower than the original amount. We did some creative magic and lowered the budget by about $125,000, and we think this will work. So the request from the city of Cortez is $135,000 per year. So there's a lot of potential future funding opportunities right now. The American Rescue Plan Act very clearly outlines that this is an acceptable use of those funds. We've identified, and I just had it up. We've identified a funding source of up to $1 million that can cost share with this, and it's through now I'm blanking. Human Services, through CDPHE, CBH. Office of Behavioral Health through, it's been a long day. So we found a funding source that can help cost share to get us through 2 years of the program. We've also had conversations with the Lore Foundation, with Nikki. Colorado Health Foundation is really interested, as this would be the first rural version of this program and could set us on a national stage for how this works and why it's great to collaborate with multiple agencies. Rocky Mountain Health Foundation is also an option, and we have some other funding sources in mind. So in terms of bringing funding into the program and extending it past the 2 years, we feel really confident that funding will be available in addition to working with municipalities and the community to see if the community wants to continue it after 2 years. So next steps, talking money, which no one likes to talk about. And then after Tuesday, whoever's selected as the contractors will start developing the policies and procedures with the steering committee, which is this crew. We will be pursuing outside funding sources really soon, probably this week. We have a lot of writing to do. And then we will start hiring on January 1st and hope that if anyone knows anyone that wants to be in this cool type of program, that you'll let us know. So, I tried to talk fast. Questions?
I've got 2 questions.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, your ask today is only for the 1 year, correct?
Yes and no. We would like council to approve year one. We think that with the OBH funding that we've identified, we could stretch it to year two. But if council can approve year one, we can make year one happen and come up with a plan for year two.
And then my second question, I'm sure you've probably been asked this quite a bit, but does this program intend to utilize the Unite Us referral resource thing that's come into our area recently? Amber Bye's the one that's heading it right now.
You know, I'm not familiar with that, surprisingly. I don't know that we'd be using that particular protocol, but it's something that we can look at. What we are using in Durango, and I would assume that the behavioral health contractor who's selected for this program would use the same thing, is working with the client to identify what options they need and making sure that they have a choice in who they're referred to, who they're connected with, and making sure they're willing to participate. So that's what has worked really well in Durango, and we're not using a format at the moment, if that makes sense.
Okay,
but will you send me info on that?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So on Saturday night, I was speaking with a former student of mine who works with the Cortez Fire Department, and I just kind of wanted to get a boots on the ground perspective about the number of calls that he responds to, that maybe, I think like you mentioned before, it seems like when there's a call, everybody goes out for the call, and it was a really interesting conversation. It's kind of what I had anticipated, really. So I do have kind of a question around that. First, so yeah, I'll ask that question, I guess, first. But so do any of the agencies anticipate any sort of a cost savings in the future once this model is up and running, knowing that calls wouldn't include, potentially 4 different agencies responding to a call? Will it free up an officer, for example, to respond to another thing that needs attention? And having said that, I looked at the price tag and I was like, oh, gosh, I don't know if we have that kind of money allocated anywhere, but I'm also really supportive.
The simple answer is yes. And the primary goal for this program is not to be a cost savings program. That is a byproduct that will come as we become more efficient and are able to really make sure that the right people are at the right response. A lot of communities have had cost savings. It's just hard to calculate right off the bat. You get cost savings overall for a community when you divert uncompensated care from an ER. But it will also depend on what kind of things that we decide and what's appropriate to do in the field. So whether those are medical clearances and things like that take up a lot of time in the ER and are costly. Cost savings for them, really it just puts them back out in the field in a different way. So we didn't want that to be the primary thing because it is hard to calculate, but it is an outcome of every program. And hopefully, we'll get people connected and using resources that may save them money because they're not using the judicial system, not paying court fees. Hopefully we can find ways that also save the community money through this. And I don't know, Jay, if you want to add.
Yeah, 38% of our call volume is overlapping. We've got one call and we get a second call that comes in. And frequently we get a third one and occasionally a fourth one. So we're managing 4 incidents at the same time. And when that happens, if we're on one of these incidents where we've got both crews, the engine and the rescue, with 5 people helping, a couple paramedics from Southwest Ambulance and a couple law enforcement officers, and somebody suffers a cardiac arrest. I like to think of this program as a life-saving tool, maybe not a cost savings tool, because truly that's what it'll be. If we're on the east side of town on an incident that involves all of the agencies, and we're there for safety reasons, quite frankly, a lot of times when we have that many folks there, and we have a cardiac arrest patient, in town somewhere, every 30 seconds counts, right, in the chain of survival there. And so that's what we're hoping for, to really try and cut down on that overlapping call volume and be available for those critical incidents.
So just to kind of follow up with what I was saying, I think it's brilliant. I think programs like this are needed. I think they're just a really fantastic model. And as another person who's boots on the ground, somebody who's teaching, somebody who is the principal of Southwest Open School, when you put those statistics up, none of those surprise me at all. And these are things that I see every single day. I can see the value of having someone maybe who's not in uniform, no offense guys, approach a child that may be experiencing trauma at the time and have a different outcome than a bunch of people in uniform maybe responding to a situation. So I do see just a huge amount of value to the program, and I'm 1,000% behind you guys. My question again is just kind of about like the funding piece. I mean, if I was a millionaire, I would write you a check right now. That's how much I believe that, in what your proposal is about. I just think it is absolutely the way we should be operating. So you have that part of my endorsement, and with the caveat that I just am not sure where $135,000 would come from.
Sure. So in our research and triple checking today, the American Rescue Plan Act funds do permit this type of program. So it is money that you all could designate to the program in year 1, if you don't have any other big plans for it yet. And then we can work. The great thing about the funding that we could pursue through the Office of Behavioral Health is you can use the American Rescue Act funds as a match, which is unusual to be able to do that kind of match, but I really think that we should leverage it while we can.
Can we hear from Kelly Koski real quick?
Thank you, Councilmember Yazzie. So I did a lot of research on the funding that we have for the American Rescue Plan funds that we have received this year, and that we will also be receiving in 2022. It is possible they have loosened some of the restrictions on new programs, so that has changed a bit. However, I can tell you that GFOA guidance still warns against starting new projects, pilot projects that are only operational for 1 year. So I would not recommend that we use our American Rescue Plan funding for this pilot program, this design, to last 1 year, and really doesn't have a sustainability plan in place at this time.
Sure. And I appreciate your perspective. I do want to read from the American Rescue Plan guidance from the Treasury Department that it can be used for mental health services and substance use disorder services, including for individuals experiencing trauma exacerbated by the pandemic, such as community-based mental health and substance use disorder programs that deliver evidence-based psychotherapy, crisis support services, medications for opioid use disorder and recovery and support, school-based social and emotional support, and other mental health services, referrals to trauma recovery services, and for crime victims. And while I agree that this would not provide the sustainable funding that's being looked to in the future, it is a way to get it started. My concern is that the trend we're currently seeing is unsustainable. I've lived in Montezuma County my entire life, and for those of you that are in the same situation, you know that the substance abuse and mental health problems that we are seeing are growing on a curve that's just exponential, and that's unsustainable. I'm also concerned about the sustainability of somebody who calls because their child, their spouse, their sibling is experiencing a behavioral health or crisis of some sort, and when a traditional EMT shows up with an ambulance because nothing's broken and nothing's bleeding, they're not going to be admitted to the hospital. And when law enforcement shows up and it wasn't a criminal activity, they're not getting taken to jail, and the parent, spouse, sibling is left saying, well, what do I do? Where do I get help? That's unsustainable as well. And so I think for all prior years, we've continued not to address the issue, and I don't think that the path we're on is sustainable. We are seeing costs associated with this now. Many of the people having behavioral health episodes are on medication. The second they're taken into custody, Medicare and Medicaid no longer pay for their medications. And so when they go to the county jail, that becomes the responsibility of property taxpayers within the county. If we can keep them out of jail, take away that M1 hold, not get them arrested, that can continue to be covered by Medicare and Medicaid. Now, are you going to see that savings directly in your balance books? No, but eventually over time those things wash out. And we quite frankly have some incidents that have occurred that have occurred this last year that have resulted in the death of teenagers within our community, that quite frankly, had a program like this been available, though that teenager may still be alive, and another teenager that was greatly injured may not be dealing with the things that she is dealing with today. And I'm not exactly sure what dollar amount we can put on that.
Mayor and Council, if I might just add in here that, there is no doubt that we need a program like this. But Councilmember Kefauver, you make a good point on how do we do this and what is the sustainability point of this, or the future. So tonight was merely meant to be informational for the council. The ask was not meant to be for tonight. We still have some details to iron out, and I'm in the process right now of preparing a position paper for the council to consider before we make the ask, just so that I, for one, want to be satisfied that you are satisfied that you are well informed. And then we would prepare to bring this back for the ask as early as next meeting.
I just had two quick questions. One, in the presentation, the number was for 135,000. In our packet, it's 175 in the fiscal impact zone. I wanted to kind of check in on that difference.
Yeah, and I'll just ask Haley, but between the time that the packet was prepared and now, that number's gone down.
Okay.
We figured out a way to manage the program a little bit differently, using the expertise of the contractor for EMS and the contractor for behavioral health, when they're selected by the commissioners. And each contractor has the expertise to do some of the management that was in that higher rate. So we thought we could accomplish the cost savings, use our subject matter experts, and be able to pull this off at less of an expense to the municipalities. So I made that change. Sorry, Drew.
Down is always better.
Yeah, exactly. Down is always better. That's true. I think it's definitely an excellent program. I think when we look at our community, not just the city of Cortez, but Montezuma County as a whole, I think everybody in this room, everybody that lives in this community recognizes that these are major issues that we're dealing with. And we've seen that over the last probably 40 years, probably longer, that a lot of this has been pushed on to police departments that aren't exactly equipped to deal with the mental health crisis side of things. I think we need to find a way to implement a program like this. So I guess I'm going to kick it back over to Drew that we really do want to hear from you about it and at the next meeting to move forward.
Thank you. Yeah, we will make sure that happens, but we'll be also collaborating with the group here. We want to make sure that we get to the right outcome that we can afford.
And I will say, from a mental health perspective and a HRSA-funded facility, one-year grants are not out of the ordinary for us. We write for every penny, we fight for every penny. So between us and this amazing team over here that has so much experience, you have a team that's really dedicated. Whether we're selected as the contractor or not, we'll still be involved in helping stand this up because it's important to us. And we will help find that funding. We have plenty of programs that go year to year, and every year we figure it out. And I think when the community sees results and data, just like we've seen from our Durango program, it will be less of an obstacle to get them on board with finding a truly sustainable funding source, whether that's, a sales tax, mill levy, marijuana tax funds, wherever we can find it to make it not have to be year by year. So we are all committed to that, and we'll work it out.
So I have two questions. Kelly, you said that the language for ARPA, it says that it warns against, but doesn't explicitly state that pilot programs are not allowed.
So within the American Rescue Plan Act, it does not specifically state what is not allowed. It has a pretty broad and general definition of what the funds can be spent for. Even within the GFOA guidance, I've never seen GFOA say specifically that you cannot do A, B, or C, but it does state that it would caution against using ARPA funds for new programs that are designed to be pilot programs or last for only a year with no sustainability piece.
Okay.
I think the reason for that guidance is because they realize that the American Rescue Plan funding is a one-time shot in the arm. It's not designed to be a continuing and ongoing funding source for municipalities, and that's why the guidance is asking that you take a look at current projects that you have on the table that have been stalled to complete with those funds.
Right, and it sounds like there's perhaps another funding source that would make it at least sustainable for another year. And then my second question is, how will this impact our first reading of the budget for 2022? Will we be able to make that adjustment for the budget after approving first reading, or what's the process? If assuming, obviously we're waiting for your paper, but how would it affect the budget if it were to go through?
The plan for this is not to effectively budget for it. The plan is, and that's another reason for waiting till after next meeting, is I'm fully anticipating not even presenting this to council for the ask until the budget ordinance is passed. And at that point, I'm asking for a special appropriation because I want it completely separate from the budget. And it's something that's independently considered by council. And then next year, if we have to roll it into the budget, we will. But, and I'm sure there'll be some piece of that, but I think it's very important that we cut this off, especially where we're considering using ARPA funds or otherwise. So, no, it won't affect tonight, short answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a quick question. When you mention contractors, that's going to be a different group, not counting our officers and our EMS and everything. Is that correct?
So the counties asked for proposals, and we'll select a contractor for the behavioral health, and whoever's selected would then hire clinicians. Axis will be applying, and we hope we're selected, but we might not be. And Cortez Fire Protection District is applying to be the EMS contractor, and hopefully will be selected as well. So either way, whether it's us providing the services with people that we hire, we'll still be involved in a steering committee role.
Okay, I just want to clarify, there's not going to be a special group here, but when this contractor is going to be, try to get local anyway, but
Yeah.
that's what I was looking at.
Yeah.
But that way, but the officers are still, like the chiefs and the county, sheriff and
Yeah.
everybody still be involved.
Absolutely, and we recognize that it will take really special individuals to take on this work, and we're considering that in hiring. You know, it's different work than, you know, regular fire shifts or
Oh, yeah,
law
I
enforcement
believe
shifts or
that.
therapy in a clinic. So
Yeah.
we're going to be really careful about hiring and make sure that it's the right fit for the community and the program.
Okay, appreciate it. I just want to say, because I know it's a different atmosphere, because my wife volunteers for the victim assistance. And
Yeah.
it's a whole different ball game.
That's
Thank
great
you.
that she does that.
I just wanted to say really quick that I know you guys work together all the time in different capacities, and I didn't know that this was happening kind of behind the scenes. And I'm just really thrilled about it, and I just want to thank you guys for getting together and, you know, even bringing this proposal to us, because it makes just a heck of a lot of sense. So thanks for your hard work and putting it all together.
Thanks. And Drew has been involved and brought a lot of thoughtful conversation and his expertise from his past life too. So we've really appreciated that. So thanks for allowing him to give us the time. And it's definitely been a long process, but we have the right people at the table. I really do believe that, to make sure that this is successful.
Okay, so we'll wrap this up, but I really appreciate you guys' time, and I understand where you're coming from, Kelly, but I think I think this really is a chance to, without increasing our budget, but having these extra funds to try this, because trying nothing is clearly not working, and we need to do something different, and that this is a great opportunity to really, you know, try and address these issues and heal our community in different ways. So thank you guys for all the work you've been doing. Okay, so we don't need to have any action items tonight, so we'll move on then. Sorry, it's getting late. But then we'll move on to item C under new business, and it's the ordinance number 1291, Series 2021, Finance Director Kelly Koski, for our first reading of the budget.
So good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Medina, honorable council members. So here we are. I bring before you the first reading of ordinance number 1291, Series 2021, which is for the approval of the 2022 budget. You'll notice that there is Appendix A along with the ordinance. That actually goes through and it details out all of the different department budgets that we went over in that marathon session on Saturday. I do want to say, I feel like this budget process was one that was very successful because of the new software program that we were able to use this year. we were able to make sure that all of the department heads had input, that all of the supervisors had input, and there was a lot of time and many, many discussions with the departments and staff before we got to the point where we met with all of you on that Saturday. And the body of work that you see before you, I think, represents a very inclusive 2022 revenue and expenditure schedule. Also with Patrick and his wonderful, I'm so glad that he came to talk to all of us about Tabor. I just wanted to also mention that this budget does meet all Tabor requirements for the city of Cortez. Just wanted to, in case somebody was wondering, just wanted to make sure that we covered that. I would ask that we go through and approve first reading of the ordinance and set the second and final reading of the ordinance for October 26th with additional public hearing. Does anybody have any other questions?
I guess I just have a question of these specific items that we had pulled out when we're asking about.
Yes.
I guess I don't know where we finalized, this was the Bridge Homeless Shelter, the Axis, the Southwest COG, and Mesa Verde Country.
Yes. So those items are in the actual line item detail of those specific budgets. I can do a report from the ClearGov software and send that over to you that'll actually show the 21 budget, the 22 proposed budget, and I can also include a percentage change so that you can see the exact line item where those were either moved from or included in for this budget. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thanks.
They're in there.
Okay.
The ones that are supposed to be.
Great. The ones that we kind of decided on at that special meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I will get that out to all of you so that you can see those in each individual line item within those budgets.
Thank you, Kelly.
Sure.
Any other questions from council? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion, or?
Sure, I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve on first reading ordinance number 1291, series 2021, approving the 2022 budget and set for public hearing on October 26, 2021.
Second.
Dobry,
Aye.
Kiefhoffer, Lucero,
Aye.
Rainey,
Aye.
Yazzie,
Aye.
Medina.
Aye. Okay, thank you so much, Kelly, and the finance department and all of city staff for making this process really smooth. Okay, next on our agenda, we got draft resolutions, none. City attorney's report, none. City manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just as a quick point here, and I neglected to inform everybody, I think earlier tonight, our city attorney is ill and opted not to come tonight to expose everybody. So we don't necessarily think he has COVID, but he's certainly under the weather. I'd like to just share the top 3 items for the previous 2 weeks. And I wish Chief Knuckles was here. I don't know where he went, but I'm just pleased to announce that the police department, with the assistance from their law enforcement partners, have arrested the suspect in the shooting that occurred across the street from Kemper Elementary. And I believe that there's some more public information out there. This isn't the venue for me to share that. But I just wish to thank Chief Knuckles and the members of the police department for their diligence and professionalism while handling that incident from start to finish. Number 2, the landscaping for the Mildred Montezuma intersection project is now complete, and perhaps you saw it on your drive in. So that finalizes the entire project. And I just wish to thank our Public Works and Parks Department for a job very well done on this, and it looks marvelous. Number 3, just wanted to update you, the candidate search for the Parks and Recreation as well as the Public Works Director is underway in earnest. I was contacted by the recruiter yesterday, sorry about that, and advised that he has had several requests for information and more materials, and actually has some, as he terms them, submittals in hand. There's not truly applications, but people who have applied for the position. Then also, council, I want to, as I do these every couple of weeks, I want to highlight an employee, so if you'll bear with me. I think it's important because we have a lot of behind-the-scenes employees that just kind of get overlooked sometimes, but they do a marvelous job for us. This week, I'd like to highlight Kyle Kuhn. Sorry, I pronounced it wrong. Kyle Kuhn. He's the IT technician, and he was mentioned by our IT manager, Shay Allred, for a job very well done during the Third Thursday event, the last one we had, wherein he was instrumental in getting the sound system to operate properly for the band. They had a real glitch there. It almost didn't come off. They got Kyle down there, and Kyle fixed it. So I, for one, am very glad. That was probably that was an evening to remember. Also, I just want to point out that Kyle, he tends to work quietly from behind the scenes, and his efforts are often overlooked because he doesn't ever seek recognition. But rather, he just wants to do his job the best he can each day, and he does just that. So I just want to thank Kyle for his hard work and dedication to the city. It's most appreciated. Then one last thing, council, I'd like to invite you tomorrow afternoon at, I believe it's 2:30, to attend our employee recognition. Is at 2:30 tomorrow in this room, our employee recognition gathering. They call it Pat Spins and Rolls, where there's different options they get for a job well done as well, and you're all certainly welcome to attend. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll move on to City Council Committee reports. Do any council members have reports this week? Okay, so then we're going to move on to other items of business. The item that Arlena added to our Councilmember Yazzie added to our agenda. It's communication between advisory boards, city staff, and council.
Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to provide a report on workshop?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, first I'll do the workshop report. So in our workshop, Patrick Rondinelli from DOLA, who oversees the Southwest region, came and presented Tabor, or gave a presentation on Tabor and educated us on the inner workings of Tabor and how it affects city budgets. So we appreciate his time coming down here from URA. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I requested that this item be put on the agenda just because of conversations between myself and the city manager regarding, I would say, like the streamline of communication between advisory board, city staff, and council. And so I wanted to discuss this with the council and see if it's, and with city manager, and see if it's something that would be of interest to explicitly state how that communication should run from advisory boards up to council. So, forgive me, I'm a little bit all over the place, but obviously we have a member of city council that's typically on the board, and then we have a city staff liaison. And I feel as though best practices have been, at least from my perspective, with Gulf Advisory Board and the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, to have communication from the advisory board to the city staff for any questions related to projects that they're recommending. So like that city staff would go to department heads or to the city manager to get some clarification, bring back to the advisory board. I also have concerns around advisory board members going directly to department heads and city staff to gather information about specific projects. So I did want to put that out there and see if anybody had any other thoughts.
Thank you, Councilperson Yazzie. Yeah, I do as well. I think there's definitely I definitely have some concern with advisory boards kind of, for lack of a better term, monopolizing staff time in a way that can be disruptive of business as a whole. And I think we as a council need to whether it's providing direction or building a process to avoid that. I think we need to make sure that the city staff's able to function and that we also receive the appropriate amount of advisement from our advisory boards.
Would it be possible for us, as we potentially, as I mentioned before, look at the purview of the different advisory committees and compare and contrast them at that time? Would it be appropriate to maybe discuss the lines of communication? If that doesn't exist, maybe it does, and I'm not aware of it, but so that it's consistent amongst all the advisory boards.
A thought that I had was amendments to the ordinances which established the advisory boards to include language around the lines of communication. And when I did review the Arts Committee language, there was not any explicit protocol or procedure for that. But I guess also the bigger question is, City Manager, do you feel like that would be supportive of yourself as well as city staff?
Yeah, actually, that would be very helpful. Sorry, Mayor and Council, it would be very, very helpful. Right now, we have a lot of very passionate people, and they're kind of going in every direction, and it is very hard to bring them in and focus. One of the things that we're struggling with right now, and we kind of experienced some of that just tonight, is that there seems to be a artifact of thinking out there that somehow there's these budgets set aside for them to do and to use. And really what it appears to me is that we've gone past, hey, I need to advise the council and the city on perhaps parks issues, and being that sounding board and that representative sample of the community for the council to, hey, how do we spend this pot of money? And that's the shift in thinking that I think is there. So this would be very helpful. Yes, I think there is some lines of communication we need to shore up, because I think it's just very, very vague. And I think we need to do that, but I would definitely need the council's support to move forward with this, and honestly kind of push back a little bit, and gently and kindly, of course. But right now, we are in a position where honestly our committees have some forceful personalities, and we're being more told what we're going to do versus collaborating and deciding what needs to take place.
Would it be helpful to put on a future workshop agenda, maybe set aside half an hour where we can pull all of the, for all of the committees and make sure that we have the appropriate language as part of that, and then kind of do a little legislative review, so that if the ordinances or resolutions don't reflect that, we can then update that.
Absolutely, we can do that. We would need just a little bit of time on that, because all the pressing matters heading into the end of the year.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make clear that what Matt and Robert are asking. So we're going to review all of our advisory committees, and I think that would also help us create a vision for the Arts Committee, because I think there isn't quite one, and so if there's not that hierarchy of goal and mission, it's easy to kind of diverge and try and, they're a little lost on what they can and want to do, and so that will hopefully clear that up. And then I also want to make sure that the band shell discussion is going to be on a workshop item. And I'd also like to request then that we take a look at that ordinance that was passed with the band shell.
It was actually a resolution, and yes, we
A
can.
resolution, okay.
Yeah.
Can we also add that to either the workshop or the agenda? I think that needs to be reviewed on what we've promised, and if we want to keep it that way, and kind of keep those conversations going as well, so that we can help them not be in limbo and either proceed or, end it.
Absolutely, and we would be happy to do that and bring it forward, so it's no problem at all. In fact, I got it on my files, so.
Okay.
Would it be possible to have the printed ordinances that established the different committees for each of us?
Yeah, oh yeah, provide that to council, you mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Would it be possible to provide it?
we can certainly do that. It is all over the map, but now's the time, I think, to probably address that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arlena, for bringing that up. Okay, so I'll move to adjourn. Do I need to move? Okay. We're done. Thank you. Thanks for staying late, everyone.